The third chapel on the right is dedicated to Saints James the Greater, Louis of Toulouse, and Gotthard, who are portrayed on the back wall. The upper lunette is dominated by the figure of Christ, displaying the 5 wounds, and on the side walls appear St. Bernardine of Siena on the left and St. John of Capistrano on the right. The frescoes were probably executed in the 4th decade of the 16th century by a painter from the Brescia area. The 6 figures are shown life-size against the backdrop of a blue sky dotted with clouds, with their feet arranged to suggest perspective and their hands busy. But it is their gazes, which at times cross ours and at others intersect with each other, that engage the viewer in a kind of mute conversation. We can imagine that the choice of depicting the 3 saints on the back wall was dictated by their peculiarities. Saint Louis was in vogue to ward off the plague. Saint Gotthard was a favorite patron of merchants, and Saint James the Greater is remembered as the first martyr apostle. The 5 wounds of Christ, surrounded by 4 little angels with symbol of the Passion in the lunette, refer to martyrdom. But it is the 2 lateral figures that are the most distinctive of the devotions associated with the Church of San Giuseppe, Saint Bernardine of Siena and Saint John of Capistrano. It was Bernardine, in the summer of 1422, who began the extensive Franciscan preaching in Brescia, and his cult was established only 2 years after his canonization in 1450, through the iconography that distinguished him. A thin, ascetic figure, constantly accompanied by the trigram of the name of Jesus that he used to display at the end of each sermon. He is also the protagonist of the 26 episodes that retrace his life in the paintings executed in the early 17th century by Antonio Gandino on the walls of the middle cloister. On the wall opposite that of St. Bernardine of Siena is St. John of Capistrano, his most affectionate disciple, who came to Brescia in 1451 for the festivities of the patron saints Faustinus and Jovita to commemorate his death in 1444. And it is precisely the extraordinariness of this episode, which drew over 100,000 people to the then Piazza del Mercato Nuovo, that is illustrated by the mural painting executed in the small cloister in 1713 by the Brescia painter Giovanni Antonio Cappello. The cycle is well preserved because until the 1920s, the back wall was covered by a canvas, painted in the 2nd decade of the 18th century by the Brescia painter Pietro Avogadro, depicting the 4 crowned saints, which is now kept in the nearby Diocesan Museum. The painting was commissioned by the group of stonecutters, of whom the 4 crowned saints were patrons, as tradition identifies them as 4 Christian stonemasons who suffered martyrdom under the Emperor Diocletian. This altar contributed to making the temple known as the Church of the Paratici, guilds of merchants and craftsmen who worked in the nearby Carmine district. Numerous guilds, including those of cheesemakers, shoemakers, and carpenters, dedicated altars to their patron saints in the church over time, and some of their members were buried in front of the altar of the patron saint.